All right, our next guest is going to join us all season long. He's going to become our new Kings insider, NBA insider, of course, from The Athletic, Anthony Slater. Anthony, welcome. We're thrilled to have you on a regular basis. We're just wondering, I know a lot of fans are wondering, why would you lower yourself to that? Why would you subject yourself to that?
I plead the fifth on that. That'll be the one time this entire season for you guys that I'll plead the fifth. I will try to not do that again.
All right, we got you. Is there anything that happened in this preseason that, as far as you know, would actually concern Mike Brown?
Oh man, I would say just like there doesn't seem to be a ton of like juice out there, effort. Which, you know, you can blame on the preseason. You can blame on, like, you know, the core of these guys are multi-year vets, some with all-star appearances that don't need to be that juiced up for the preseason. But, you know, you would want to see maybe a little bit more meshing. I don't know that, like, the schematics on the floor. I mean, I know DeRozan struggled with his shot a little bit the last couple games. Sabonis has looked good. But I don't know. I would say that, and then the other thing is, and I know this is injury related and absence related, but the bench looks really thin right now. And again, that can change when Trey Lyles pops up, when Kevin Huerter pops up, when Malik Monk is there more consistently. But it's just that part of it has not looked great.
Yeah, Anthony Slater joining us, our guy Slates. You know, it's a small sample size, and you brought up DeMar DeRozan. How do you see that fit working going forward? I mentioned it and likened it to, you know, having different style running backs. You have you know, your base offense, and then you bring in your heavy package. And like, I feel like they need to have like a DeMar DeRozan package offensively.
Or how about just DeMar DeRozan's, like, not solo minutes, but, you know, I think the way you kind of do your subs with a team like this matters. You know, are you completely staggering Fox and DeRozan, so every time Fox isn't on the floor, DeRozan is? Or, you know, do you like his pairing with Sabonis? You know, him and Sabonis are really talking about this two-man game that they like to run. So maybe you just kind of like, you know, you mentioned it as a package. It's almost like a drive in football, but, you know, like if Fox is off the floor for the final 4 minutes of the first quarter, you just spam those type of actions. But, you know, they all got to kind of figure out how to fit with each other, because the truth is most of these games are going to be decided in crunch time when they're all going to have to be on the floor. And Malik Monk's probably going to be on the floor with them, and everybody's going to figure out how to kind of morph into the correct roles, which for a lot of them, Keegan Murray, another guy, going to be lower usage on certain nights for a lot of these guys.
Anthony Slater with us in the piece that you and Sam Amick wrote, and we know you did most of it, so, you know, wink, wink. But it's an incredible piece. It really is. It's fascinating. What is De'Aaron Fox looking for from the Kings before deciding whether he wants to stay beyond his current deal?
I would say, as he kind of laid out, I thought pretty honestly and transparently, but just like a pretty clear path to consistent, at least fringe contention, right? I mean, I think he had a line in there about, like, you know, he doesn't want the peak of this run to be that playoff run a couple of years ago. Sure, I mean, everybody will always remember it in Sacramento, but you don't want to just to be remembered. Almost like, remember those Warriors teams from way back, the We Believe Warriors? Mm-hmm. They made it in 2007. It was this fun run, and then they kind of faded out for a while until Steph Curry showed up. Like, you don't, like, he doesn't want that to be the feeling, like exiting this season if they didn't make the playoffs again. It's like, it's just kind of like a flash. I think he needs to, I mean, he's voicing it. He needs to feel like exiting this season, like the trend line is upward and it's heading towards, you know, a team that can at least sniff West Finals, maybe even NBA Finals. And, you know, that's a tall task. And we'll see. I'm not sure I believe they have the team that can be a Final Four type team, but he needs to feel that pretty clearly, because he has some pretty lofty ambitions, you know, for his career that include potentially getting a championship.
Slates, how much do you believe that's De'Aaron talking, and how much do you believe that's Rich Paul putting that in his head?
I think that I think they're being clear. You know, Rich Paul, you know, to be looped into this, but De'Aaron, I think they're being clear that, like, you know, he's happy, he's satisfied. He was very much in on the DeMar DeRozan recruitment this summer. He was very happy about that. I think that you know, there's a belief those two can fit together. I know from the De'Aaron side there was there's kind of a belief that DeRozan's ISO skill set will kind of take some of that load off De'Aaron, especially late in games. So I don't think, like you said, from Rich Paul or from De'Aaron, there's like this is any type of grumbling, but De'Aaron's a businessman. Just the fact that he hired Rich Paul will tell you that he wants to up the business side of his brand and really his basketball career. So I mean, the two are kind of one in a sense. Like when you hire Rich Paul, this is like you hire your career to be taken in this type of direction.
Slates, pardon me for sliding a kind of folded two-parter at you, but I'm wondering what ultimately convinced DeMar DeRozan to become a King, and I know you wrote about this as well. How much interest was there from other teams in DeMar DeRozan?
There was a lot, but to your question of like what pushed him to become a King. I mean, the money was big here, right? The Kings were the team that got it all the way up over $20 million. There wasn't that much cap space out there, and a lot of teams that were kind of sniffing around the DeMar DeRozan market were talking mid-level, 13, 14-ish million, and I think the Kings had to creatively get it up over 20 and for multiple years, and they did that. Now it cost them a pick swap deep in the future that might hurt them, come 2030s, and obviously you lose Harrison Barnes, but they beat out the other type of teams. I really think because of a financial thing and because they're going to compete. There were cap space teams out there that I made calls on DeMar DeRozan. We're talking the Pistons, those type of teams, but DeMar DeRozan does want to win, and that is where the Kings of today are separate from the Kings of 3-4 years ago. Like they can make the argument, hey, come here and you could be part of a legitimate playoff team. You could be, a number 1B, a 2A, whatever you want to call it, for the 5th seed, theoretically, the 3rd seed. I mean, you can at least make that pitch, whereas 3 years ago, Kings couldn't make that pitch to a free agent.
Yeah, and I know that, since Durant left, the Warriors have been bending over backwards to bring in that next star for years. So how, and they were in on supposedly Markkanen this year and Paul George. Were they, and I know you wrote about them in this, what was their level of interest in DeMar DeRozan?
They made the call. I don't think they were going to make the maneuvering or the kind of like the cap space gymnastics that the Kings were willing to make. And they were also still hunting for Lauri Markkanen for like a month after that. And that was definitely higher on their priority list. So it wasn't nearly as aggressive as the Kings. I'll say that. And I think the fact that it wasn't nearly as aggressive is why you see him in a Kings uniform.
Hey, Slates, when you look at the Kings roster, are you hearing about any moves that they could make, adding anybody, Jay Crowder, anybody like that? A lot of talk was, when they made that McDaniels trade, here comes Zach LaVine or Brandon Ingram. Obviously, we don't think that's in play, but are they still shopping around, do you think?
Yeah, I mean, the truth about the McDaniels thing is it saved them money in it and it freed up a roster spot for Doug McDermott. They kind of made their little, that was the vet they decided to bring in. They figured they needed a bit more shooting. He adds it. It's going to be tough for him to get on the floor from a defensive perspective. But you're not going to really find anyone on the free agent market at this point on the minimum that's going to be a firm rotation guy. As far as the Zach LaVine, Brandon Ingram realm, I mean, that to me is more of a later December, January, February question when the trade market starts to heat up. All these teams right now are going into the season like these are their team. The Bulls are LaVine's look good in preseason. They're going to come out and try to win games to open the season. The Pelicans the same. I do think the Kings potentially could be an aggressive player down the line, but I think usually 20 to 25 games until most teams either decide, hey, is the season going in a poor direction, we need to sell, or hey, let's go after something.
Anthony Slater with us. One of the best parts about the piece you guys wrote was breaking down how Domas went through this and his emotions, hearing DeMar might come here and then seeing that he was coming here. It's like what fans go through, sometimes. Is anybody in Sacramento as excited about the addition of DeRozan as Domas seems to be right now?
Yeah, no, that was kind of the interesting part. And sitting down with him was, I had heard from people around him that he'd really not necessarily warmed up would indicate that he was cold on. He was pumped when it happened, and he was almost skeptical it was going to happen. And if it does, and he's kind of elated. But then DeRozan sets up this week of workouts at USC with him, a couple weeks after the trade. And he said after he went through these 5 a.m., workouts for about a week with him and talked to DeRozan a lot because, we all know Sabonis is he's a really high IQ, passing, angles, cutting, that type of basketball player. It comes from his dad. And he would just sat there and would have conversations with DeMar about post footwork and stuff like that. And he said that's when he really got excited about this fit because he just thinks it's a veteran, it's a small player, but it's also a guy that can come in and they can really talk through issues, talk through offensive schemes and stuff like that this year. And he just feels like that's what this team needed. And again, when I talk to people around Sabonis, they said there is definitely an extra level of excitement from him entering training camp this year because of the DeRozan addition. Now I have not checked back in the last 5 days as far as how the preseason went. But
he's playing like he's very excited to play with him.
Yeah, it's true. And I don't. Again, these are two long time of veterans to ring alarm bells after the preseason. But
right.
Yeah, Sabonis was very excited.
Hey, Anthony, my boy Kevin Huerter didn't play last night. We know he's been cleared. Are all signs pointing to maybe he'll be ready opening night? What do you think about that?
Yeah, I like the way you put that. All signs towards the maybe. Because that's probably how I'd put it.
Right.
The last time I really checked in, they were in the Bay, and I was kind of asking people that Kevin Huerter was going through a pregame workout. It looked normal, regular, and I think they had literally just announced he was cleared for contact. And, talking to the coaches and stuff, they were like, he's hopeful. This next few days would probably be big for that. These are kind of, you make your camp cuts, you get your full team kind of this weekend. This is everybody across the league, and then you get into some hard practices and prep for the first game. And I would assume if Huerter goes through those well, then there's a chance he's a go. But the reality is he's close, right?
Mm-hmm.
When you get cleared for that full contact, even if you miss one or two, like Kevin Huerter will arrive soon.
Anthony, we have been talking to writers and broadcasters from around the league last couple weeks or so. If there's a consensus, it's that DeMar DeRozan is a great player, a great teammate, but that there may not be an ideal fit here. What made the Kings decide that this fit would work?
They were searching for an upgrade, really all summer, but going back to last trade deadline, they wanted to kind of, take their roster to the next level. And they've tried plenty of things, including they kind of sniffed around the Lauri Markkanen thing this summer, which probably 100% would cost a lot. But also, that would have been probably a higher ceiling upgrade, a 27-year-old on the rise, stretch five. So DeRozan to the basketball world, as you're saying, is he's older and he's, clunkier fit, not as good a defender, all that stuff. But the reality is he's an upgrade. He's an upgrade from a personality and a presence standpoint. And that's the one thing I continue to hear from everybody in the Kings organization. Kyle, you probably feel this way being around too. His presence is so huge for them in the locker room.
Yeah. Anthony Slater. Yeah. Go ahead.
Yeah. And I would just I just felt like this was the one that they could get done. They couldn't be picky. I do believe they understand the challenges that come with it, and the fact that they're certainly not a flawless team at this point, particularly on the defensive end. And I don't think anyone is predicting that they're going to go conference finals, NBA finals, but they just felt they really needed an upgrade, and this was the move they could make.
Well, we're thrilled to have you on board this season, Anthony. And does he get anything, Jay? Does he get a T-shirt or a mug or any kind of a badge or a button or anything? Or
we'll give him a participation ribbon.
How about that?
Participation ribbon. All right.
We don't have it yet, but at some point during the season, we're going to get that to you, Anthony.
All right. I'll be there. I'll be a golden one.
We appreciate it. Thanks. Have a great weekend, and we'll talk to you soon.
All right, fellas.
All right,
thank you.
All right. Oh, that's good stuff. Participation ribbon.
Yeah, he didn't sound too excited about that.
Got to make it purple too, though, right?
Yeah,
King's color, purple.
We have some